Nice Radio's Kalulu presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts at 9 p.m. on Sundays. Remember, you can always catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, so you can always catch us on YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 27th day of June 2020. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. In preparing for this week's edition of Just Another Look, we came upon the following passage taken from 1 Peter chapter 1 verses 15 to 16 in the New International Version of the Bible. It reads, "But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy." End of quote. We also came upon Christoph Friedrich Blumhardt's prayer for today, Saturday, 27 June 2020, that reads, "Lord God, help us to be holy as you are holy, and free us from all the earthly things that try to torment us. Grant us your spirit, that we may do what is right. May we always hold your hand confidently. Protect your children everywhere on earth and help them to do what is right, even if the whole world does what is wrong. Help us so that all we do becomes holy and pleasing in your sight. Let your grace grow among us and among the nations, and let your hand be strong to bring in your day when every day is made new. May your name be kept holy. Your kingdom come, and your will be done on earth as in heaven. Amen." We thought it important, friends, to begin this week's edition of Just Another Look with the foregoing biblical text and the prayer that you've heard. Because more than anything else, it does appear that St. Vincent and the Grenadines today is in need of prayer. The nation is woefully in need of God's redeeming grace. For too long, dear friends, Vincentians have allowed themselves to be conned into believing that politicians will provide them with the liberation that only God can give. There has been a most fundamental error in this regard. But politicians also often appear, by their frequent references to biblical passages, their frequent references to God, to be of an understanding of the importance of religion in the region's political culture. And so there is always reason for us to believe that the politicians have been able to manipulate much of the electorate, playing upon their faith and leading them to link that with support for a particular political party, a particular political persuasion. It is the reason why some ask about the Saul to Paul transition and whether within our context there may not be an attempt by some of our political leaders to convince the electorate of an amazing transition from near communist to suddenly the most avowed Christian politician that you can find. It is the games people play, as Erich Fromm tells us. Our politicians have displayed immeasurable greed and over-bloated desire to display a power that is at best transitory. Today more than ever, Vincentians need to wake up. Wake up to the reality of living in a benevolent dictatorship, where what passes for governance may best be described as weaponized hubris. Yes, weaponized hubris. An attempt to place everything within the context of an individual. It is the reason why historically in St. Vincent and the Grenadines we have had situations where political leaders have become so convinced that it is about them that they can boast that even if we put a stone to run for office in a particular constituency, because I am the leader, we are going to win. It is the reason why we see political leaders surrounding themselves with sycophants who engage in obeisance day in, day out, convincing the leader, yes, leader, you are the best. Yes, leader, you are the best. And it is the reason why we have pointed to the situation with Matthew Thomas, who once penned a letter to the editor saying Ralph Gonsalves was the brightest person best suited to lead St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Not long after the general elections of 2001, Matthew Thomas began an expose on his perception of, quote-unquote, the real Ralph Gonsalves. And so in a very real sense, Thomas found himself having to apologize to the nation. Not like Junior Bacchus had to do as well. Because when they were exposed to the real Ralph Gonsalves, they thought it incumbent upon them to come to the nation, to come to the electorate and apologize because they made an error of judgment in each case. Today, more than ever, Vincentians need to wake up to the reality of living in a benevolent dictatorship. Wake up to an understanding that what passes for governance is in fact weaponized hubris, the promotion of an individual above everyone and everything else. Only one individual can make St. Vincent and the Grenadines better. Analysis of St. Vincent and the Grenadines should allow us to conclude that since 2001, we have been held hostage. Yep. Vincentians have been held hostage to a form of politics that is more reflective of the antiquated Eurocentric order than anything innovative and contemporary. We have been taken further and further back ideologically and psychologically because of a recognition that, as C.L.R. James so often reminded us, as Cassim Bacchus so often reminded us, as George Beckford so often reminded us, and as Bob Marley so often reminded us, it's extremely difficult to rid ourselves of mental slavery. We're still caught up in that. Our leadership have brought to the fore their personal agendas. warmed it over, packaged it in the colors associated with love, and then distribute it among us. It is their legacies, their desired agendas that are consistently fed to us as a nation, fed as fodder, deemed in our best interests. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And they know it. And it is the reason why they glibly smile at us, perhaps gloatingly laughing at us underneath, for being so simplistic, for allowing ourselves to be conned over and over and over again with the same warmed over ideological positions. Nothing new has been brought to us. Nothing innovative. Nothing imaginative. The psychological syndrome of dependence still today negatively impacts the minds of the majority of our populace, evident in the residual effects that has 5% of the population controlling more than 75% of the nation's wealth. You, dear listener, can decipher for yourself the pigmentation of the majority of that 5%. Why is it after so many years of quote-unquote emancipation, even as we speak of reparation for the years of enslavement, even as we speak of reparation, the most likely beneficiaries of any such reparation would be the 5% that control the majority of the wealth of the country. It will not trickle down to those who were the victims of enslavement. That remains the truth in almost every instance where we talk about reparation. Because we're talking in terms of dollars and cents put on people's lives. And it's being paraded by governments that are themselves reflective of that old political order. And so they dress themselves, they cloak themselves as champions of the poor. Champions of the poor. They don't know what it is really to be poor. Look at them. Look at many of them, and you'll see how they have responded to poverty. Our decidedly prejudicial education system has not fundamentally changed. It continues instead to leave us increasingly dependent on the handouts of politicians. People who use their political power, however transitory, to wield even greater control over our minds than the former conquistadors and colonial masters. Think of it. They parade themselves as purveyors of an education revolution that never existed. Their system of education has not fundamentally changed. There is nothing innovative. There is nothing imaginative. We are simply running the same route, warming it over, marketing it better, but its content, its intent remains exactly the same: the colonization of the minds of the people. The contemporary plantation and their plantation owners today are far more insidious in their creation of strategies aimed at ensuring their continued control of the minds of the Vincentian people. nothing has changed. If anything, it has gotten worse because it is far more insidious. The plantation owners of today have confused us more than ever, enough to have many believe that racism no longer exists. Not here. Somehow it has escaped us. Amazingly. And amazingly. And who tell us that? The people who lead us. The beneficiaries of the system that colonized us. The successors of those colonizers. A recent headline, however, says it all. It reads, quote, "The greatest risk racism ever pulled. The greatest trick racism ever pulled was convincing England it doesn't exist." Just Another Look is saying to you today, 27th of June, 2020, we can change that. We can say the greatest trick racism ever pulled was convincing us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that it doesn't exist here. In today's Vincentian society, intellectualism has surrendered. Intellectualism has been sacrificed on the altar of economic expediency. Because today in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are valued more by what we own. The size of the house, the brand of the car, the number of cars, and the beverages we imbibe. More than anything else. We are not valued because of who we are as human beings. We are not valued because of who we are as citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Critical thinking in today's Vincentian society is spurred. Critical thinking is spurred. Those who engage in critical thinking becomes the object of the most vicious attacks by the minions of the ruling regime. They are called all sorts of names. They are either regarded as internet crazies, people possessive of a sort of learned helplessness, nasty and vindictive, lowest common denominator, minority wrongs. All those terms are projected by leaders and repeated over and over and over again by the minions. If that is not evidence enough of the extent to which we have weaponized youth at the level of leadership of this country, of how we render even more pervasive the insidious ways in which we create strategies aimed at ensuring continued control of the minds of the Vincentian people, then what is? What is? That is Vincentian society today. Critical thinking is spurned, and the well-trained minions, like communist cells, grab at straws even though constricted like crabs in a barrel. That is our reality. At 40 years of independence, we hear the vainglorious boast, renewal at 40. But after 40 years of independence, we have no foundation for research and development. None. None. After 40 years of independence, we have no strong sense of history. Evidenced more than anything else by the barrenness of our attempts at making the Garifuna experience something valued. The vast majority of Vincentians have no idea or interest in the history of the Garifuna. After 40 years of independence, we lack independent thought. And those who dare suggest a level of independent thinking are viciously attacked. After 40 years of independence, we lack a sense of unified nationhood. Our once treasured intellectuals, our once treasured progressives, have all surrendered themselves lying prostrate at master's table, hoping for the dribble and drippings that fall therefrom. That is what they have become. Contemporary youth who read of the work of the so-called progressives over the past few years are shocked by what they see of them today. The extent to which they have sacrificed on the altar of economic expediency. At the end of the day, they have abandoned the struggle for what they perceive to be, quote unquote, a better life. Lying prostrate before Papa. After 40 years of independence, we consistently drive our most talented people away from our shores. And amazingly, even as we do so, we hasten to point to their achievements abroad and laud them for being Vincentians, perhaps at the same time glad that they're staying away. We point to the achievement of Vincentians abroad. We put them in the newspapers, we commend them, we put them on television. And perhaps quietly wish that they don't come home because it'd be embarrassing to those who are a current crop of leaders. But we also fail to recognize that many of those Vincentians who have gone on to perform abroad may well be unwilling to return home to make those very contributions to their native land because of our consistent and persistent failure to contemplate what we can do, what we can achieve if we really apply our resources to facilitate their immense potential being put at the service of Vincentian society. But we boast of renewal at 40. We boast of renewal at 40. What is that? It is an empty parody of a concept that is at best designed to hoard ULP party members together in celebration. As was done some years ago when we had this big diaspora conference and the mass confusion that took place because they didn't want certain speakers. They didn't want certain people to participate in it. That's renewal at 40. It is renewal at 40 for some people. For the loyal party supporters. Perhaps it is a means of expressing gratitude to them for the number of years that they have put the party back in office. Renewal at 40 is an empty parody of a concept that is more designed to hoard ULP party members together in celebration in the hope of another 5 years in office. In the face of the pandemic, we are witnessing an amazingly debilitating effort on the part of the ruling regime. An effort aimed at squeezing whatever political currency is in offer from wherever, in order to better position the party for general elections at the end of the year. Don't fool yourself. All the touting of an economic rescue package is tainted, in fact, by the desire to win at the polls in the next general elections. The old colonial ethic of black people only remember their last meal remains in effect. Look around and observe as the politicians thump their chests, vaingloriously boasting of the pittance they dribble out to the Vincentians, while attempting to position themselves in the nation's history in terms of their contributions to the nation's poor. Imagine a prime minister attempting to convince himself, more than the nation, convince himself that he's in the top 5. He's in the top 5 for helping the nation's poor. Why would a prime minister want to do that? It is the nation that judges that. It is the nation that determines that. It is the nation that expresses that. When you have to do it yourself, you are exhibiting just what we've been talking about. The weaponizing of hubris. It is all about you. In truth and in fact, it is not about the nation. What a sad state we are in. We pray God today, though, and every day, that we come to an understanding of Peter's message in his first letter. That we strive to be holy. And God is holy. And that we seek to do this every moment of every day of our lives. But you're listening to Just Another. You hear it only on Night Radio. Just to let you know that we haven't stopped killing people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Murder! We haven't stopped killing people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Even in the face of the pandemic, we can find a watchman for the Windsor Primary School dead, killed. 56-year-old Henry Nevers. We're killing people willy-nilly still in Vincentian society today. While the police is anxious to tell us that they're doing something about crime, one wonders when one heard the comments and read about the comments on the document that went viral on social media involving police officers, very high level. One understands the challenges that we have in this country. And you ask yourself, what constitutes leadership in this country? Maybe the Commissioner of Police is following the good example of the Prime Minister. Because they're both leaders. When you analyze their leadership, you ask yourself, what constitutes governance in this country? What exactly constitutes governance in this country? You know, we have always declared without fear of contradiction that politicians are a different breed of people. Politicians. And over the past several years of doing this program, Just Another Look has maintained that when some people get into what they perceive to be positions of power, they are likely to see themselves as being capable of saying and doing just about anything. They often see themselves even as infallible. The power so consumes them that they see themselves almost as infallible. And the political culture stupidly allows our children and the members of the electorate to suddenly see these individuals whom they have known all of their lives as larger than life. And that everything they says, however stupid it is of significance because they have power. Glenn Jackson made that popular, you know. We are in power. We're not in government. We are in power. And the politicians that hold our ministerial portfolios for the last several years have enunciated that same rubbish. They see themselves as holding positions of power. They can do to you whatever they feel they like. That's why we ask the question, you know. A politician not even yet in office can fire off a firearm in public the lead up to the last general elections in 2015 and get away with impunity. There's no need for anybody to ask whose weapon it was. Only we at Just Another Look So Stupid, we ask whose weapon it was. We ask, did he have a firearm license? We ask, was the firearm his? If he did get a firearm license, when did he get it? When did he purchase that firearm? Because the one thing you know, is that people who were present know the truth. While the government forces, the police, etc., appear not to even have conducted an investigation into that matter with Carlos James in North Leeward, the public in the vicinity knew exactly what happened and they know the truth. But take the rest of the nation for a ride because you are in power. The man who would be king calls on a radio station and declares that if he was up on the mainland when Paper Alexander was said so and so and so and so and he had his gun with him, he would shoot him. And that goes away with impunity. Because they are in power. They could do and say anything. Because they understand that they are the new gatekeepers. They are the new gatekeepers of the incensed society. They are the quote-unquote good example for our nation's youth. That's what they are. But when we apply our critical thinking skills to much of what politicians say and do, we come to the realization that they are not geniuses. Instead, they are often prone to an exceedingly high level of what we can only define as sheer stupidity. Because sometimes when you hear what politicians say and when you see what politicians do, it's sheer stupidity. But they have the capacity to weaponize you, viewers, to make themselves seem larger than life. And you ponder, do consciences really exist? Do consciences haunt people? Really? For the past several years, we have labeled Louis Straker Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe. Because analysis of his political demeanor would perhaps suggest that this is the best way to describe him. Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe. You know, sometimes it's like labeling the Prime Minister Dr. Salt. Yeah, you get an understanding after a while why it was necessary to call him Dr. Salt. Just as we call the other one in health Little Boy Blue. Looking for the horn to blow pom 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 around the tongue. Yeah, coronavirus give him a new lease on life. Oh, he is Little Boy Blue blowing a horn. And he and the Prime Minister look like they're anxious to determine who is in control of the horn on respect to coronavirus and who could take the most credit for what is happening with coronavirus. So you have an understanding of what is happening in our society. And in previous issues, we have had reason to ask whether Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe was the person who enunciated at a ULP convention in Maracay some years ago that the party should not just own the country and own the campaign and own the whatever. They must also own the jobs too. Now, some people appear to think it may have been Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe. But just another look say, but wait a minute. This is a man who's a Christian. This is a man who appears to be sufficiently dignified. A man who has perhaps sold himself as being concerned for the well-being of Vincentian society. So would it be possible for him to make that kind of statement? No, that's not possible, man. Because it is not expected that anyone would so allow his politics to descend into such naked political tribalism and still maintain his position in government. Why would you allow that? So we said, nah, it can't be him. Can't be him. So this is the reason why Just Another Look never wants to believe that Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe would ever allow himself to become so despicable to utter those words, and certainly not at a ULP convention. Nah, that's not possible. That could never be true. So it is the reason, just to be sure, we continue to ask whether or not it was he who did so. We're not getting an answer, but we continue to ask. Because we want to be clear that a Christian in the fraternity of the Unity Labour Party who holds a ministerial portfolio would not really be contemplating that only people from their party should live, should get jobs. Instead, Vincent and the Kennedy. Nah, that doesn't ring right with Christianity. So we say that could never be true. But we continue to ask. Maybe one day he will answer. Similarly, we never really want to believe that Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe would have been a member of the triumvirate that once conceptualized taking a stand within the ULP vis-a-vis Gonzalez's leadership style in the hope of having him removed from office. We know two of the three. We know Stanley Storky John and we know Ken Boye. While some people may want to suggest who the third person is, we are asking, was it Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe? Was he the third person in the triumvirate? If he was, would he tell the nation that he was one of the three? And why he would have been one of the three? More importantly, why he left the other two? We don't want to believe that he was in that. Nah. How could he have been in that? And then become Deputy Prime Minister? Most loyal to the Gonzales, to Papa, to Dr. Salt? Would Louis Straker, whom we dubbed Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe, would he be willing to tell the nation about that particular period in the party's history? Or would Ken Boye or Storky John come clean with the nation and explain to the nation exactly what happened there? What was it about Gonzalez's leadership style within the party that so concerned you that three of you were planning to get together to take a stand? And then suddenly the three became two. Who was the third? But more importantly, if you were so concerned about what was happening within the party, and the party became government, do you not feel you have a responsibility to the nation to caution the nation about the concerns you had in terms of leadership style, because that person has gone on to become the leader of the country and has maintained that leadership for many years? So let the nation know what you saw. Let the nation know what you thought and why you felt it incumbent upon you to start something, to take a stand. Tell the nation. Can't hurt you. Old people say the truth will set you free. Perhaps it would. Perhaps it would. Perhaps it would be good catharsis as well. But we don't believe Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe was part of that. Nah, not that fella. Too decent a Christian to be involved in that. But he can tell us. He's free to tell the nation. He's an upright, upstanding member of the community. He's free to do that. But whatever the histrionics of the past, those still very relevant in present circumstance. We had this spectacle recently of an incredible and incredulous statement from Louis Straker in the Parliament on Monday last, the 22nd day of June 2020. People make history for all sorts of things, for all sorts of reasons. And people get into history sometimes not the way in which they would like to be recorded in history. But the Hansard, which is the official record of the proceedings of Parliament, will forever chronicle what Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe said in Parliament on Monday last. It is also captured in the newspaper of Friday, the 26th of June 2020. But it was captured the following day after it was said, the 23rd of June 2020, in Eyewitness News. And the headline read, quote, "Vincey's not suffering that much because of pandemic, Sir Louis." So the Eyewitness News article began as follows, and we quote, "While unemployment has risen 10 percentage points since March, government revenue fell 18% in May compared to 2019. And 3,164 persons have filed for state assistance amid COVID-19. Deputy Prime Minister Sir Louis Straker says Vincentians, quote unquote, are not suffering that much, end of quote unquote, because of the pandemic. End of that quote from the newspaper. We perhaps need to pause here. We perhaps need to have a moment of silence. A moment of silence for the sheer stupidity of that statement. The sheer stupidity of the statement. The sheer insensitivity of the statement. Coming not just from a minister, from a minister who is a Christian. From a minister who is Deputy Prime Minister of this country. So it is therefore reflective of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He's the Deputy Prime Minister. One expects that the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are in sync with each other. Vincentians not suffering that much because of the pandemic. Clearly, he may not be suffering that much, and he could speak for himself. His bread is apparently sufficiently buttered that he can talk about not suffering that much because of the pandemic. We need time to recover from the sheer stupidity of that statement. From a Christian in Parliament. From a parliamentary representative, a constituency where people are known for low income levels, and from a man who is the nation's Deputy Prime Minister. That we're not suffering that much because of the pandemic. This comes even as the Minister of Finance has released figures saying unemployment has risen 10%. Of course, we don't have, when the ULP was in opposition, they often tell you, don't bother with the official statistics about the level of unemployment and underemployment, Be concerned about the unofficial figures. And of course, they could have called any figure they want because they had no way of measuring it. Other than by saying they're grounded with the masses and therefore they know that plenty people unemployed. Well, the opposition can say the same today. What is the yardstick that Camilo used to arrive at this 10% unemployment increase since March? Where you get that from? He doesn't tell you. Yeah? But even if we take him at his word, we could measure government revenue and he say yes, it fall 18% in May. Probably end up more than that overall. And they have given out state assistance to 3,164 persons. Some people may want to suggest that is electioneering. But in the face of that, even if you buy that from within your party, what level of intelligence allows a member of that same party, a deputy prime minister of the government of that same party, to get up in parliament and say Essentia is not suffering that much because of the pandemic? Where on the face of God's earth does Louis Straker live? What sort of analysis has Louis Straker entertained or engaged in to arrive at such a ridiculously stupid comment? The level of insensitivity is beyond belief. In a society where people are really concerned about the well-being of our people, he'd have been asked to go through the door. Resign with immediate effect. In fact, some may suggest that if he had the gumption and the character, he'd have walked through the door on his own. He would not wait for anybody to ask him to resign. Having recognized what he said, he should have resigned. But then, for the rest of the week, that became the major talking point on all sorts of forums, except perhaps on the media that's under control or loyal to the ruling regime, who would probably not have seen anything wrong with anything like that. Because they haven't seen wrong with a lot of things. They can't see wrong. They see dollar signs. They can't see wrong. So, during the past week, just the comments alone from people across the country should have pushed Straker through the door. Go home, you retired once, don't let nobody pick you up at no funeral again to tell you about come back and run. Just go. Quietly ease out and go about your business. Because this piece of your place in history in this country will resonate with successive generations of Vincentians. But it is reflective. It is reflective of the state of play. And it's consistent with what we were saying earlier about the plantation that we are on. The new plantation owners believe that they can put in government individuals who are capable of this kind of statement. Lack of respect for a nation. Where do you come off telling people they're not suffering so much because of the pandemic? And your own government in the same parliamentary session is telling you the extent of the suffering. You, in your own presentation, in that same thing, go on to say how much government has to spend. Millions. to do things, and they have confidence that they will find the money to do things. And that justify taking more money and spending it on buildings. You went on to say that. But Vincentian not suffering so much because of the pandemic. We ask, what was Straker thinking when he uttered those words? Even as the words came out, they should have resonated with him to allow him to recant immediately. Correct yourself. Apologize to the parliament and to the nation. There and then, that would have rescued you. But instead, you left it. Because that is Vincentian politics today. Right is might. The concept of infallibility. We can tell them anything. We can say anything. We can do anything because we are in power. That's it, you know. We are in power. So where was Straker? That he did not understand the bleak economic report that his own party, his own government, his own Minister of Finance came to present to the same nation's parliament on the same day. Where was he? Mars ain't close enough. He must have been further still. Vincentians have lost their jobs. The financial assistance being afforded some people is woefully inadequate. We understand the plight of the poor in respect of health services in this country. We know the problems with accessing medical care, quality medical care. We have to fight up and fight up and fight up and beg and scrape and beg and scrape. So much so that the Prime Minister himself ended up going to a plane to take out boxes, albeit it had the wrong and expiry date had long since gone by, but he didn't see that. He was too busy trying to show the nation that, look, are still good enough and big enough to be able to go and take a box from a plane and not have the porter do it. I could do that too. I am a Prime Minister. Look me carrying boxes of medicine. Right? We don't have the money. We're begging people to help us. Of course, we beg Taiwan for just about everything that we have in the country. We can't stop begging Taiwan. And you get up in the face of that. Ignore all of that. I say Vincentian not suffering too much. Vincent, you recognize what would have happened if it got any worse. But we're not suffering too much. The cost of living index continues to rise. The government, as enunciated by the Minister of Finance, tell you that if they did not put a moratorium on people's water bills, many more people would have been negatively impacted. It's the same with electricity. And you, in the midst of that, display one of the most ridiculous political statements in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You make that statement in that same parliamentary session. We have a minister of government whose political puerility does not allow him, or does not appear to allow him, to grasp the overall significance of what has happened in this pandemic for the average Vincentian. How is it possible for a minister of government whose government claims to be in love with the people of this country, whose government boasts of labor love, whose government opened the international airport at Argyle on Valentine's Day to show how much they love the country, who for years has been giving out love packages of lumber, cement, galvanized and steel particularly around election time, whose government is now giving out love boxes, because everything for that party is love, and you make what tantamount to a most idiotic statement in the nation's parliament that enters the Hansard, the official record of parliament. You can't live this down, dear friend. You can't live it down. How? Perhaps we were wrong to use the term earlier, political puerility. That seems much too kind a term. But you have to understand that Straker's faux pas, his blunder, his ridiculously puerile, imbecilic statement in Parliament on Monday has to be understood even further in the context of a Christian in politics, in Parliament. Because when we do that, we have an even greater appreciation of the insensitivity of what he said. That there's nobody on the government side that was even willing to apologize to the opposition and to the nation because they are in an arm of government. Parliament is the official legislative arm of government. Nobody felt it incumbent to apologize in Parliament to the nation for such a ridiculous statement. But it is reflective, dear friends, of the lack of respect for the people of this country that the government currently and consistently displays. You know, we keep asking, we live in a society and a time when more than ever before we are challenged to be our brother's keeper. More than ever, we need faith. We need a faith that would see us through, as the song says. This is not the time to be quiet, especially in respect of our Christian mandate. Importantly, Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe emerged from Parliament on Monday, with only those in opposition having to point to the error of his ways in respect of his comment. And of course, the media and the average man in the street have taken it up. None of that was surprising. None of that is surprising even as we speak. But it is the way of Vincentian's politics since 2001. Members of the ruling ULP appear to believe that they can say and do whatever they want and emerge unscathed and unfazed. But believe you, successive generations will judge us. They will judge us for our consistent failure as a people to stand up against such practices that clearly appear inimical to the nation's best interests. But remember too, the Eyewitness News said, and we quote, the Central Leeward MP made the assertion on Monday as he argued in support of the government borrowing $53 million to build a new parliament and courthouse buildings. Build a new parliament. Let's take pride in where we are meeting. By the time you are making it appear that we must either decide on corona or termites. This building is so termite ridden, Sir Louis told the debate. How long are we going to sit here? You want another 2 years? You want another 3 years? And then our people are not suffering that much because of Corona too. True, we have some unemployment. True, we have some unemployment. But this government has several programs in place that we would be able to help those who are poor, those who are needy. We are helping them. We are spending millions of dollars, said Sir Louis, who is also Minister of Foreign Affairs. End of quote. You know, friends, if we are to follow the logic, it appears that Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe was asserting that things are not really all that bad as a result of the coronavirus, such that we are in a position now to borrow money and divert finances away from the proposed buildings to look after Vincentian needs. Don't bother with Vincentian needs. We already have that under control. Let me build buildings now because we're concerned about our legacy. Megalomania, man. Build. That's one of the biggest criticisms from the left in the 1970s and 80s. They chided governments for emphasizing megalomania. Look at most of our government buildings. Look at the state that they are in. Even when you build them, maintenance is woefully inadequate. It's like the nation's roads. You know. In 2001, we were told, listen, we're going to have an approach to road repair where we're going to have teams in different parts of the country. So that as soon as something happens in a part, we don't have to mobilize people from one central area. We're going to move from the nearest area will look after them. That ain't happened since. It sounded nice then. It was enough to convince the electorate. It ain't really happened. We're still over-centralized. We're still, in the midst of the pandemic, we're doing a whole lot of things and spending a whole lot of money on a whole lot of different things, but we haven't done the roads yet. Just another look is of the view that those roads will be done as we get closer to the election. Again, right? Like people only remember their last meal. So as you're coming towards the election and they see nice roads and so on, boy, we got them again, right? That's why we want to build a whole lot of things. Build everything. But you didn't tell people about the geothermal mess until the people started telling each other and telling the nation that the geothermal project failed. Right? If you weren't so boastful before, anxious to have the chicken before they lay the egg, then we would not have had this problem. But there is no shame and therefore no apology coming from you with regard to that. Just as we'll have no apology from Straker with regard to this. That's the way we do things, you know. We promise a cross-country road. We give the public the impression we were starting at both ends. Boy, that looked real good. And we went nowhere. And we said nothing. Now that we have completed the construction of the Argyle International Airport, people ask for accountability. The response, that was not a statutory body, you know. We are under no obligation to explain any accountability to you. Certainly not in Parliament. So the nation does not have to receive any accountability statement about the nation's single largest capital project in history. That is history too. The inability or unwillingness to give appropriate accountability for that airport. But you see it rusting daily. So perhaps when the wire fences and them collapse because of the amount of rust, etc., perhaps then we will get some accountability statement. Look at the post office building, what once housed Prime Minister's office, and look at the state. Look at the state of government buildings around the country. Look at some of the facilities around the country that are government owned and the lack of maintenance. But we know that when election time comes, once we build something and it's fancy and it's new, We good. We good. Because we can fool some of the people all of the time. But remember, you can't fool all of them all of the time. So you see, it appears that Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe was in effect minimizing the overall impact of COVID-19 on Vincentians generally. What is amazing here is that Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe's input comes across as politically imbecilic. And there are no surprises there. But his statement can be matched. Years ago, you remember Montgomery Daniel, right? In Parliament. He wanted to impress the nation by suggesting that the economy, the Vincentian economy under the ULP was doing so well that farmers of arrowroot across the dry river left the ripened arrowroot crop to rot in the ground. The economy was doing so well. They apparently didn't need the money, the income from reaping the ripe arrowroot. He said that they were busy clearing barrels, too busy clearing barrels to clear the product from the ground. There's a man living in an agricultural area that is economically depraved. That was the stupidity of a statement that was made then. We have always reminded people of that because it is reflective of the way ULP administrators believe that they should run a country. And we thought that that was an all-time low for Vincentian politics. Up comes Louis Straker on Monday the 22nd of June and betters. He bettered Montgomery. He made Montgomery look like an intellectual. He makes him look like an intellectual by his stupid statement about we are suffering so much because of the coronavirus. That is an even lower level for us to go. And the man has the gall to still stand up as this country's deputy prime minister. Just when we thought that it couldn't go lower than what Monty says, up comes our friend Louis Straker, and he betters that. He lets you know. Yeah? He lets you know that we could do worse than that. To those who dare to apply their critical thinking skills, Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe comments must be among the most embarrassing they have ever heard in Vincentian politics. One could only imagine the emotions that may have welled up in Dr. Salt as he heard the comments being made. Unfortunately, as Just Another Look has always insisted, there is no shame in the degradation to which we have sunk as a nation. There is no shame in respect of what we have fed as governance. History cannot possibly absolve them, and neither will any amount of fanciful buildings. But Eyewitness News quoted Martin Luther King Jr. wannabe talking about the building, the Parliament building. Quote, "This building is old and tired." But Just Another Look says, without any fear of contradiction, that we should apply that to Louis Straker himself. You there, sir, are old and tired. Enough said. But we can tell you, friends, that in our Vincentian society, over the past several days, we have heard of the social media piece that has made the wrongs in the country a nasty, nasty, vicious conversation. While the media has openly declared and written exactly what was said, we will not do that here. We just think that the public deserve better. But the words of the conversation were bitterly nasty. But the document raises several issues for Vincentians. For one thing, it brings to the fore that we have what we have enunciated here for a very long time. We have lost our way in terms of morality and ethical standards at every level. There's a dearth of good example all across the country, from political leadership to religious leadership to organizations, social organizations, to the family, to the school, at every level. Religious leaders have seemingly, like the politicians, lost the moral authority to speak out on issues that negatively impact the society, for the most part. There are some who are making the effort. Sexual abuse is a veritable norm, as is domestic violence. And now more Vincentians are aware of the extent of sexual abuse and domestic violence in Vincentian society. You know, Ronald Fletcher wrote some years ago, British Society, the home is the most dangerous place. The home is the most dangerous place. And he was talking about the systematic destruction of the family. Because there is a tendency to believe that the family is sacrosanct. But when you see what transpires in Vincentian society with our politicians and they flirting with their little smallies all over the place, and you know that their wives are at home trying to figure out how to make ends meet and how to keep the house in order, then you have an understanding as to why the home is the most dangerous place. Because the politicians seem to forget that they have children, and that the children are being socialized by what they see, practiced by their parents. But we hold them up high because somehow we believe that they are infallible, and that somehow their wives would understand that it is all right for them, because they are politicians, to have smallies all over the place, and in some cases to have children. It is the decrepit nature of our social circumstance that allowed us to see a rally in Kingstown develop as the major response to what should have been a court case. The matter of the Prime Minister and Michelle Andrews end up being nully pros. That's how we do things in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Why we didn't allow for a full ventilation of the truth in the nation's court? Will we ever give Miss Parsons her day in court? Or will we nully pros that too? And those are leveling accusations at the Prime Minister. And then we had the fracas with the son's wife and Yogi Farrell. Yeah? Minister of Finance, 7 or so portfolios. In line among those who are supposed to be the next leader of party and country. And then we start getting revelations. So, you see, when this thing broke, perhaps they didn't expect people to start talking about the whole truth and the nature of the relationship between Camilo Gonzalez and Yogi Farrell, knowing that Camilo and his family live together. And then people start talking about who was paying for Yogi Farrell's apartment and how long that has been going on, etc., etc. But it is acceptable in Vincentian society today because the politicians and their minions and their major supporters endorse that lifestyle. And it is snowballing. So that's why we can talk of a new morality, which is the absence of any morality whatsoever. So we're not anxious to talk about Vincentian society being a Christian society anymore. because we're throwing Christianity out the door because we like a different lifestyle that is tantamount to licentiousness. So it's the reason why nobody talked about some of our religious leaders who really should have been defrocked for this kind of behavior. But, hello, where they support the party, there's no issue. And we give thanks for those religious leaders that are holding fast to their faith and unwilling to play politics with religion. They speak out as Christ did. They remember the message that the child Jesus read in the synagogue as to what is his mandate. They're not playing games. Others may be doing so, but they are not. And we're thankful that we have them, however few in number. Historically, policemen have been known for having children in almost every area in which they are stationed. That has been so normative, it's almost endemic in almost all of the societies. Children everywhere. We also know that when you look at information coming from across the region, that policewomen have been, from time to time, accused of having an understanding that if they sleep with people of higher ranks, they may eventually get promoted. One of the challenges to the concept of social mobility in society is that it is not all based on merit in an academic sense. It may well be based on whether or not you're prepared to sleep with the boss. I suppose in a manner of speaking, that may be considered merit too, eh? If your mind twisted and warped. And there are some people who believe that that happens in the political realm as well. So social mobility is not based only on academic excellence or meritocracy as in the academic sense. It may be based on meritocracy as applied to other skills, if you want to call it that. But what you're hearing or what you heard in the recent social media fracas is despicable. In paramilitary organizations, people don't talk to one another like that. But people can respond in a way because they know the system. When you listen to what happened inside there, and the Prime Minister say, oh, he asked for a report. He didn't hear it. But remember, he don't hear anything, you know. He knows all things, but he doesn't hear anything. The phenomenal being. He doesn't listen, he doesn't hear anything, but he knows everything. He's asking for a report. He's asking for a report. Everything out in the wash, he's asking for a report. He should ask for a report on the disappearance of J8SXY with Suresh Lakram, just like he asked for one on the disappearance of J8VAX, piloted by Dominic Gonzalez with Rashid Ibrahim on board. Should ask for a report. And then have the nation discuss the report. But you know what report to ask for, so you ask for that report. Yeah? But what is interesting from our vantage point is that in the national discourse on the social media piece involving police officers, people are saying, we know the voice of the man in that. We know the voice of the man. And that is interesting. Because in 2015, there was a setup of a politician in this country. And a tape was produced with a young lady engaging a man in conversation on the phone. Down to the point where when the lady made reference to wife, of the man, he suggested that the woman he was talking to on the phone, was the wife. Our relationship is such that you are the wife. What wife you talking about? Sort of. You know, if you paraphrase the whole conversation. And back then, a few people were saying, but we know that voice. But it was quickly shut off. And it died. And it died because the New Democratic Party, as an institution, did not understand the politics in which they were engaged. Because had the shoe been on the other foot, that issue would have lived straight through the elections. Because in many respects, it was the perfect setup. And all you had to do was to engage in some voice recognition experts. And he'd have been able to say exactly whose voice that was, whose voice it matched. But they didn't do that. And they're perhaps still paying the price for not having recognized an opportunity put in their hands. But this situation, one wonders how common is this type of situation as we're hearing with the police in this social media piece. How common is that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? How common is it? You see, because what has happened and what we're hearing should not surprise us, because we are all aware, and we have often referenced, that politicians often engage in the same sort of behavior and they escape with impunity. Vincentian politicians often appear to have attained a new lease on their sex life once they get into office. And that is regardless of their age. And people in the Vincentian society also know that for some of those politicians, the ages of the girls that they engage themselves with may also not matter. Pathetic, isn't it? But true. What we have not been accustomed to is a ventilation where female police officer refuses to accept the overtures of a male officer, particularly one in higher rank. But for us, dear friends, the problem is that we have all seen and heard and maintained a deafening silence. But we keep before us the cases of Michelle Andrews, the case of Miss Parsons, the case of Yogi Farrell. Because it may well be a pattern of behavior that has emerged in our country. A pattern that is despicable, but nonetheless growing in popularity. What we see others who are in positions of power and authority doing, we tend to follow. It is the way we have been socialized. We are still operating in a plantation society. Today is 4,922 days since the disappearance of J-8VAX and 3,612 days since the disappearance of another SVG aircraft, J-8SXY. We remind you as always, of the gruesome death of Patricia Bowman on the 19th of September 2008. This year will make 12 years. Driving on her way to work in bad weather, somebody's wall fell on her car. And a Vincentian Christian society, our people, don't see anything wrong with what has happened, you know. Oh, they should have go to court then. Oh, they should have done this. Oh, they should have done that. All we say is that if it was the wife of a politician or a parliamentarian who's holding a ministerial portfolio, all heads with a rule. Or like now, so people still paying. In this case, poor people. Poor people. The same kind of people Straker talking. Poor people. Right? Poor people don't seem to matter. Poor people's lives don't really seem to matter in this country. Black poor people all the more so. So Pigeon can continue to hold his ridiculous view that systemic racism doesn't exist in Vincentian society. He can bury his head in the sand and know the consequences for what's left exposed. Enough said. You'll be listening to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m., which repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Remember, you can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check out our Just Another Look blog, and of course, you can catch us on YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph.
Bay Hill News Network is an internet radio base in Bay Hill, Cane Garden, SVG. We feature country music, love song and gospel and